The whole world is waiting for the Istanbul meeting next Friday. What's strange today is that President Donald Trump has placed a time bomb on the negotiation table with Iran. Impossible conditions, and this only means two things: either the political downfall of the Iranian regime or the green light to start the war. And this makes us wonder today, what exactly is Trump aiming for? Is Trump really aiming for an agreement? Or is he paving the way for an inevitable upcoming military strike? And what is the secret behind these 6 points that Russia and China signed? Secondly, why did they suddenly, unexpectedly move to protect Iran? We have important details today. We'll take a break and continue. Stay with us. Welcome to our renewed meeting today, God willing, in this series of opinion episodes. It's clear that everyone today is eagerly waiting for next Friday and what exactly will happen then. The anticipated meeting in Istanbul, the meeting that will bring together the personal envoy of President Trump, Steve Witkoff, with the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, and it will be chaired by President Erdogan of Turkey. This upcoming meeting will be somewhat strange. Why do I say this? Strange, first of all, because it will see the presence of a group of regional countries. Even though it aims to reach a bilateral agreement between America and Iran, it also means an attempt to prevent any American military escalation against Iran. However, it will also see the participation of a group of regional countries, Arab and Islamic countries such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan, and so on. These countries will take part in these talks, but only as observers, as if it's an attempt for these countries to play a pressure card or exert pressure in order to reach an agreement. What's also strange is that President Trump may have shattered hopes of reaching an agreement. Why do I say this? Because he set impossible conditions for Iran? He said that Iran must accept these conditions or else it will be hit with a powerful military operation. Which means, in reality, there's no need to hold this meeting today, because it's absolutely impossible for Iran or any other country, no matter who they are, to accept these conditions, Trump's impossible conditions. So before we talk about these conditions, of course, everyone knows that just a few years ago there was a similar nuclear agreement signed in 2015. Everyone knows that Trump was the one who withdrew from this agreement. The previous agreement stipulated that Iran would place its nuclear program under the supervision of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and it stipulated that there would be restrictions on peaceful nuclear energy, meaning it would not exceed a certain limit. And in return, what? The return at that time was that America and the European countries would lift the sanctions that had been imposed on Iran, and thus Iran would open up to European and American markets and so on, and would prosper financially and economically. This is exactly what happened, as there were contracts worth billions of dollars with the Europeans, to the extent that France and Italy alone had trade deals with Iran worth more than $30 billion. This previous agreement, just so everyone knows, had only one goal, which was to contain the Iranian regime and distance it from the circle of Russia and China. And that was actually starting to become evident. It was starting to happen, as a large number of contracts that used to go to Russia or China ended and shifted towards Europe. But as soon as Trump came to power in 2000, during his first presidential term in America, he cancelled this agreement and reimposed the sanctions, claiming that this agreement was not effective and did not achieve tangible results. And the reality is that the agreement actually achieved the goal it was intended for at the time, which was to keep Iran away from acquiring nuclear capability, and also to distance Iran from the sphere of Russian and Chinese influence. This goal was being achieved gradually, and at the time it was recording significant successes, even though only about 2 or 3 years had passed since the signing of this agreement. But what happened, which made Trump cancel this agreement at the time, is that this goal changed. This entity here started to see that the agreement was only in Iran's favor. Why? Because it flourished financially, it had a booming economy, and this allowed it to develop militarily and invest more in missile industries. So at that time it became clear that Iran was conducting very powerful missile tests. It was also developing very rapidly in drone weaponry, and this also allowed it to expand and strengthen its influence in almost all regions, from the waters of the Mediterranean Sea to the far east of Afghanistan. But it goes beyond that when we talk about the strong and extensive relations that Iran had with Venezuela. That means the more money there was, the more Iran's influence increased and its arms in the region became stronger. Of course, this entity does not want that. It wants the Arab and Islamic countries to be either submissive, stripped of their sovereignty, or weak, worn out, suffering internally, facing internal problems, border issues, and so on. So for them it was necessary to cancel this agreement and reimpose the sanctions again. That's why there were exciting and rapid developments. During the past few years, these economic crises have returned again. It started facing challenges on the domestic level and was no longer able to fund its proxies in the region with large and generous support, and so on. Add to that, there were also natural disasters that Iran suffered from. Add to that the drought crisis and water supply issues, a crisis that led to water being cut off from the capital Tehran. This crisis has repeatedly made Iran talk about the need to relocate the population from Tehran. Add to that, the exchange rate of the Iranian rial against the dollar went from 50,000 rials in 2018 to 1,400,000 rials this year. Add to that the defeats suffered by Iran's partners in Lebanon and Syria. All these factors made this entity, along with Trump of course, say that now is the right time to put pressure on Iran so that it submits and surrenders. That's why we see that Trump raised the bar for demands, and he did so in a really remarkable way. The entity found that Iran has 3 claws it strikes with, or at least threatens with. So Trump says today that he can cut off these claws now. Because the Iranian regime is suffering, and it's also suffering internally. Let's not forget about those bloody protests that happened recently. So the important thing is, what are Trump's conditions now that he wants Iran to accept in order to have a new agreement, and so that America doesn't use the military option it's threatening with today? He said that the first of these clauses that Iran has is its nuclear program, the second is its missile program, and the third is these Iranian arms in the region. He said Iran must give up all of this before we can make an agreement with it. I mean, for God's sake, can Iran accept this? Can any independent country in the world accept this? So Trump says that Iran is enriching uranium on its own soil, and this must end because it can't be monitored accurately. Iran could acquire nuclear weapons at any time. That's why Trump says Iran must stop enriching uranium on its own soil, and instead it should buy uranium from the producing countries ready to operate power plants. So when we talk about peaceful nuclear energy, it's not just about producing electricity at a very low cost, but also because this is a symbol of the scientific and technological status of these countries. This is a source of national pride for such countries. It gives them a high international status, and at the same time gives them energy independence, allowing them to control their own energy capabilities. Therefore, when America today, or this entity, asks Iran to strip itself of peaceful nuclear energy, this means stripping it of its international and regional status, stripping it of its sovereignty. So is it possible for Iran to accept this? Of course, it will never accept this at all. That's one aspect. On the other hand, and this is very dangerous, Trump is now asking Iran to give up its missile program, to give up all these ballistic missiles it has today, to give up its strongest deterrent weapon, to give up the #1 source of concern for this entity. After Iran invested billions of dollars to reach this level, after it achieved very advanced missile technologies, meaning even very advanced countries haven't reached this level, hypersonic missiles, cluster missiles, today they're telling Iran that it must give up these capabilities. They want to repeat exactly what happened with Ukraine when it completely gave up its nuclear weapons. What happened to it after that? It became an easy target, whether for the Russians or for anyone else. Missile manufacturing is one of the most difficult industries ever. Just so everyone knows, it requires advanced technologies, a complete manufacturing process from making alloys, rocket fuel, engines, electronics, and so on. And remember, what's most important for Iran today? The underground cities that it has, which it uses today as factories for these missiles, as storage sites, and as launch platforms for these missiles. What will Iran do with these underground facilities if it gives up this deterrent weapon? These Iranian missiles are the pride of its manufacturers. They are its only deterrent power today. This is the only weapon today that threatens the entity, the only weapon that has reached Tel Aviv. 1. It caused damage and destroyed facilities in Tel Aviv. The only weapon that makes this entity think 1,000 times before taking any step against all the countries in the region, not just against Iran. Pay close attention to these pretexts they are making up today. What are they saying to Iran today? What are they telling it? That Iran is experiencing internal protests. So it cannot be guaranteed that these missiles won't fall into the hands of parties who might use them against countries in the region without any responsibility. They say therefore Iran must abandon this missile program and transfer these missiles to another safe country. I mean, pay close attention. They are saying things that no sane person could ever accept. So could Iran accept this? Definitely not. Therefore, this is the second claw that Iran has, which they want to uproot today. The third claw is also what is known today as the axis of resistance. Iran's arms in the region, like this Lebanese party, the Sana government in Yemen, and other groups in Iraq, today they are telling Iran it must withdraw its influence from all of them. Is this possible? We are talking about the very foundation of Iran's existence today, which is these three claws: the nuclear program, the missile program, and the axis of resistance. These are exactly the pillars, the very basis of Iran's existence today. It can never give up any of them. We are talking about three pillars, and it can never give up any one of them. If Iran gives up even one of them, it will collapse immediately. Therefore, the outcome of these negotiations that will begin in Istanbul is clear even before they start. Iran cannot accept this. Therefore, if Trump remains insistent on these three conditions, or even on just one of these three conditions, the negotiations will end in failure. At that point, Trump will have to start the military operation according to the steps he always threatens with. Even if this military operation will have disastrous and counterproductive results. Everyone is waiting, everyone is watching today anxiously, waiting for next Friday. And here we can't overlook a very important event that happened about 2 days ago. The Secretary General of the Russian National Security Council, Shoigu, visited China and held very important talks with the Chinese Foreign Minister. And there was an unannounced agreement on 6 main points. There was agreement on the issue of the Peace Council established by Trump, and there was agreement on rejecting any control over Greenland or anything else. There was agreement on the necessity to support and strengthen the Shanghai Organization and the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa Organization, because there are plans aiming to undermine these organizations from within, so it is necessary for Russia and China to confront these plans together. In summary, there were 6 main points that were agreed upon, but the most important of these points, which concerns them today, is their agreement on the necessity of supporting Iran to confront this upcoming aggression. This support has indeed become evident recently through reports that spoke about military shipments that Iran received from China and Russia, but it is clear that now there will be coordination between the two countries and efforts will be unified between them so that Iran can overcome this threat. So the matter truly will not be easy for Trump. The situation is becoming much more difficult for him, and this time the situation is different. And the question always remains, will there really be a United States military intervention or not? Answer us in the comments below this video. Peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. See you next time.